Hi, folks. Welcome to Lesson 3 in our study of the Gospels and the teaching of Jesus as a part of the prophecy series. Today, we're going to continue along. Remember, we're looking at the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, concerning Jesus' teaching about his second coming. Now, again, just remind you, to his listeners at the time, they weren't even aware that there would be a second coming. They saw him as the Messiah who was coming right then for them. But what I want you to notice is that Jesus gave some very detailed information about his coming, about the things that would take place before. We also saw last week about the tribulation. Now we're going to get into his discussion of his literal coming, where he comes in all of his glory, which is the second coming. And so we're going to focus on Matthew chapter 24, verse 26 through 31, Mark chapter 13, verse 24 through 27, and Luke chapter 21, verses 25 through 28. So let's get right into our study today as we're going to focus in on what Jesus is saying about his coming. So the first thing I want to do is I want you to notice Matthew chapter 24, verse 26 through 28, the nature of his coming. Now, if you remember, we looked at verse 26 last week as a part of our study concerning the tribulation. But let's read it again as we look at this section of verses. So let's start with verse 26. So if they say to you, "Look, he is in the wilderness," do not go out. If they say, "Look, he is in the inner rooms," do not believe it. For as lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. All right, so let's go back again. We're going to start off where we kind of closed out the last lesson with verse 26 of Matthew chapter 24, where we're told to ignore the reports of others. And here's what I want you to notice. Ignore the supposed reports of Jesus' coming and don't believe them. Now, folks, I don't know about you, but I'm very much aware, maybe it's because I travel a lot, I am very much aware that around the world there are people who make appearances and who claim to be Jesus Christ. They'll say things like they're Jesus Christ reincarnated, or they are the actual Christ. And so in lots of different countries, there will be people who will appear and tell themselves that, and tell others that they are the Christ. Or you might see an article saying that he is yet to reveal himself. He's walking among us, but he's yet to reveal himself. Now, we're told by Jesus to ignore these supposed reports. So, for instance, like the phrase inner room gives the impression that he's waiting to reveal himself. He's waiting to reveal himself because it's the Father who tells him when to come. But when he comes, here's what Jesus is going to point out to you. You're not going to be confused about it. You're going to be aware. The world will be aware. So don't listen to these reports. In fact, when we come to Matthew chapter 24, verse 27, we're told it's a visible event. It's something everyone's going to see. So Jesus points out that his coming would be like a lightning strike. So have you ever been outside when you saw lightning strike somewhere and how it lights up the sky around you? It's like all of a sudden everything is just appears. You can see what it is because of the lightning. He's describing it as a lightning that happens in the east that spreads all the way to the west. So it will be spectacular as lightning striking in the east and its flash illuminates the west. It's going to be something that everyone's going to be aware. You're not going to wonder, did he come or not? So the implication is that his coming will be visible and spectacular to all. Now, there's been a lot of times, and a lot of cults have arisen out of predictions of Jesus coming. And of course, when Jesus didn't show up like they thought he did, they said, well, he showed up spiritually. No, when Jesus Christ comes back, he's telling you, everyone's going to be aware. Everyone's going to see it. In fact, other scriptures point out to us and make the point that the reality is that the world will mourn his coming. It is not something that people are going to look forward to. So that brings us to verse 28 of Matthew chapter 24, where we're told that it's a time of judgment. Now, notice what the description was, that where the corpses are, the birds gather. So Jesus implies that judgment will take place as the birds will gather to the dead. That's very much the description of the end of the Battle of Armageddon from Revelation chapter 19, where the birds come and feast on the corpses of all those who've died in the battle against Jesus, which really wasn't very much of a battle. Judgment will take place, and the birds will gather on the dead. That's the reality. So now that brings us to the reality of his coming, which we're going to focus on in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29 through 31, Mark chapter 13, verse 24 through 27, and Luke chapter 21, verse 25 through verse 27. And so here's the things I want you to see that Jesus points out. So first of all, he's going to talk about the timing of his coming. And we're going to see that in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, and Mark chapter 13, verse 24. So I want you to notice what verse 29 of chapter 24 of Matthew says. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Now, let's look now at Mark chapter 13, verse 24. Notice what verse 24 says. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. Now, here's what I want you to see. Jesus states that his coming will come after the tribulation. After the tribulation. He's coming after the tribulation. What tribulation? We talked about that in the last lesson. We talked about it being a time of trouble. We know from, for instance, the prophet Daniel that it's a 7-week-long time of terrible things that will take place on the earth. It'll be a time of judgment as presented in the book of Revelation. So he states that his coming will come after the tribulation. Now, he also, if you look at Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, Mark chapter 13, verse 24 through 25, and Luke chapter 21, verse 25, we see that these also have some cosmic events taking place. So notice again verse 29 of Matthew 24. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. Again, Mark chapter 13, verse 24. But in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in heaven will be shaken. Look with me at Luke chapter 21, verse 25. And there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of the nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. All right, so let's take a look at these verses. Let's talk about these cosmic events. At the time of his coming, there will be signs in the heavens with the sun, moon, and stars. In fact, we know from the book of Revelation that things will shift. Things will move. The heavens will not be the same. The sun and moon will be darkened, and the stars will fall from heaven. So something happens with the sun. Something happens with the moon. They're not going to be the same anymore, and the stars will fall from heaven. Listen to what Isaiah chapter 13, verse 10 says. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. Listen to what Joel says in chapter 2, verses 10 through 11. The earth quakes before them, the heavens tremble, the sun and the moon are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. The Lord utters his voice before his army, for his camp is exceedingly great. He who executes his word is powerful, for the day of the Lord is great and very awesome. Who can endure it? So there's these cosmic events. Listen now to Revelation chapter 6, verses 12 through 14. And when he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth as the fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. The sky vanished like a scroll that is being rolled up, and every mountain and island will be removed from its place. Now, these are the crazy things that are going to happen. In fact, I thought it was interesting. If you remember, one of the scriptures we read talked about the seas being in turmoil. Now, that is because the seas, if you remember, are affected by the moon. That's why we have waves. Now, let's take a look at Luke chapter 21, verses 25 through 26, and we're going to see the world's reaction. Remember, I told you it's going to be an event that's visible to all. But notice now, Jesus tells us what the reaction of the world will be. So look with me, verse 25, we've already read this before, and there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves, people fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So here's what I want you to notice. So the nations will be perplexed as the seas with its waves are disturbed. We already mentioned that about something happening with the moon. It's going to affect the seas and its waves. People will be distressed as they faint with fear concerning what is happening. People are not going to respond well. In fact, what we see in the book of Revelation is that it tells us that they will wish themselves to be dead, but they can't die. They will hide themselves, and they'll react by cursing God. So people are going to be in distress with this event. It's not like people aren't going to notice it. It's going to be, as we see in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30 to 31, Mark chapter 13, verse 26 to 27, and Luke chapter 21, verse 27, we're going to see that it's visible to all. Everyone is going to see it. Now, look with me, verse 30 of chapter 24 of Matthew. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Notice now with me Mark chapter 13, verse 26 through 27. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. Listen to what Mark chapter 21, verse 27 says. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, here's what I want you to notice about his coming. The world will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with great power and great glory. So again, this is not some event that's hidden from some, that he's coming spiritually. This is something the whole world is going to see. The people and the tribes of the world will mourn at the reality of his coming. So here it's breaking it down to peoples and tribes. That's basically everyone, folks. We're not just talking about nations or ethnicities. We're talking about people and their tribes. Some people would say, oh, the tribes here mentioned here is reference to the 12 tribes of Israel. No, that's not the point here. It's talking about the tribes of the world. And we know that we have tribes and clans throughout the world. The Lord will send his angels to gather the elect, those who are saved, from the ends of the earth. So during that time when he comes, there will be people who are saved who are here, and they will be gathered from the ends of the earth. So that brings us then to the last thing I want you to see about this teaching concerning his second coming from Jesus, and that is the exhortation. And so we notice that in Luke chapter 21, verse 28. So I want you to notice with me what verse 28 says. Now, when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, for your redemption is drawing nigh. Straighten up and raise your heads. Now, why would he say something like that? Well, Jesus tells his followers to stand with confidence and wait for their redemption which is near. This is in contrast to the world that's going to mourn the coming of Jesus Christ. Here we see that believers, because their redemption is coming, are to what? Straighten up. Don't be bowed down. Straighten up. And what? Raise your heads. You have confidence. You don't need to be humbled by anything. Your redemption, Jesus Christ, is coming. And so that brings us to the end of lesson 3, Jesus' discussion concerning the second coming.